Hello you beautiful people, just another rambling video. I just, my point about what I am doing right now is about making sure that people understand the impact on our lives that hard difficulties have. So I'm not here about the label. The label is just used as a way of recognition in the medical profession, in particular, around what is going on with a person. However, how that presents is extremely different from case to case, from individual to individual. And I think sometimes that presentation is massively in demand and there's zero understanding around it, in particular when a person doesn't actively constantly go to a medical professional about how these effects can have on our day-to-day life. Because some of the things I'm going to talk about, I know there's absolutely no point in going to a medical professional because they can't change the wiring in my brain, which is not going to change anything and how it affects my life, yeah? And the reason I want to speak about some of this stuff is because it's not spoken about an awful lot, because people are embarrassed about how it can affect them. So yeah. So when I talk about being a PDA, or what that is for me is how my brain functions and how it responds, and the impact that has on my day-to-day life. So basically what I am talking about quite often is how easily my brain feels unsafe. It's like now, in the current climate, because of all of these possible white paper changes and the wellbeing bill that's just gone through, I feel unsafe. It makes me feel unsafe, which then makes my brain go into automatic protect mode, which means that my capacity is affected, my ability in life, in everything's affected. And what that does is, when a lot of people look at feeling unsafe and safety, they look more about physical threats, like if they're going to get hurt or if they climb and do something that's dangerous. Whereas when you've got a profile like mine, anything can be a threat. Anything that you can't gain control to feel safe, all of that can make me feel at threat. Not being my brain not being able to actually control all of my bodily functions can make me feel at threat. So for example, my bladder's desperate, fit to burst, and needs to go for a wee, but my brain's like, I'm not ready for you to go for a wee yet, and I am going to tell you when I'm ready to go for a wee yet. And I'm not going to lie, that in itself can cause me to have accidents, and it is thoroughly embarrassing at times, but there's nothing I can do about it. I cannot physically fight the force of my own brain and get up and go to the toilet, because my brain's controlling it all, and my brain doesn't feel very safe. So because I have that side effect as well, because that happens, when I go out into public, I need to know where the toilets are, because if I don't know where the toilets are, because my brain usually gives in really last minute, so then when I need to go to the toilet, I need to go now. And I can't do that because there's no toilets nearby, I feel unsafe again. So it's like this vicious circle of safety and having such specific parameters that I can feel control of. And that's why I prefer to be at home, because my toilet's here. It's my safe environment. I've got everything I need, how I need it, within my own environment, and I cannot create that anywhere else. And that is another reason why our children prefer to be at home. And it's the same with school. They don't have the same control over a school environment as they do on their home environment. They can have their stuff, their rooms, how they want to have it. They can eat the food as they want to eat it. Like yesterday, for example, at tea time, William had hot dogs and beans because that's what he wanted. You know, whereas if he asked for hot dogs and beans at school, then that is unlikely that they would be like, okay, no. So yes, when I talk about, sorry, I had to pause for a bit because people kept calling me and now I've lost my train of thought a little bit. But talking about how it affects us is major, right? Because one of the things that concerns me about all of this new malarkey, the SEN white paper, you know, the consultation that closed yesterday, and what they propose to do is about fitting people into categories. But we can look at a person and see, like, for example, I'm autistic, I've got ADHD, I've got PDA, I've got dyslexia, I've got dyscalculia, I've got developmental coordination disorder, amongst other things, yeah? Now, how that impacts me on life is very, very different, and also it all depends on what kind of difficulties that we have. I'm trying to think of the words now. That, you know, because the impact that has on us is vastly different from depending, like for example, if we've got autism and ADHD, we tend to find there's a fight between needing routine and order as well as needing something that's different and new and exciting. So what our profile of need is built around and how that impacts on our life affects us each other differently depending on how our brains are wired and how we are is, yeah, rambling on now. But my main point of all of this is about looking at how it impacts us. And like I said, there's lots of things and lots of ways that my PDA in particular, because my PDA is the thing that really controls me, and it's because there's lots of things in life that makes me feel unsafe, and it's when I feel unsafe that part of my brain fires up really, really quickly and protects me, and that's where the control comes, where I'll avoid things, and that's where the PDA kind of kicks in. Now, for me, and a lot of people like me, there's lots of things out there that are beyond our control. There's lots of things out there that are beyond everybody else's control, everybody's control, yeah. But a lot of people can compartmentalise that. They can. So what other people manage to do is I can't say the word, so they can put that to one side. They can shut their thoughts down about not having that control or feeling unsafe, etc. And usually that part of their brain would only really kick up when something that they consider to be a threat, which is usually quite a big thing, like, you know, the threats of being hurt or harmed, or if you're doing something that might, you know, peak up the adrenaline, that could cause, you know, be a threat and make you feel unsafe, like skydiving or something like that. Whereas people like me, with a profile like me, anything that I can't control makes me feel unsafe, and that part of my brain fires up. Even over a little tiny thing, it fires up, stops me from feeling in control. And if I don't feel in control, I don't feel safe. So the whole world makes me feel unsafe. And everything that's happening right now, because there's no rhyme, no reason for it, there's no, you know, changes are being made that make absolutely no sense. They're taking away rights of children to the right education. They are ultimately affecting how we parent our children, how our children are growing up, and sometimes feels like they want to just parent our children for us and we're just nannies and babysitters, and that level of control makes me feel massively unsafe. And it makes a lot of people feel unsafe, I get that. But that affects me to the point where I can't even leave my house, where I'm terrified of people, where I don't trust anybody. And it's really, really hard to actually get to a stage of trusting people. And I get that. And it's the same like when we do work with people, and it's hard for parents to trust us to do that work. And I know, like, there's tools out there now, and AI is an amazing tool, and it can be really, really, really helpful, but we do have to fact check. We do have to make sure what we are looking at is correct. And also, when we are passing it over to somebody like me, who's not just got the experience of the law, but have the experience of my job, the experience of what's accepted and not accepted in tribunal. And it's that ultimate acceptance as well, especially around an EHCP, that no matter how much evidence and information that you have, it's never fully, truly going to 100% reflect your child, because of how the system works, because of what tribunal will accept, won't accept, what is written in evidence, the fact that paperwork is never fully 100% accurate, and what the local authorities are willing to work with as well. It's never going to be 100% fully accurate to where your child should be, and that is really, really difficult. And that is why, when it's not your own child, it is a bit easier, from my point of view, to decompartmentalise that word again, I can't say it, so to put it to one side. So I start looking at it now as, we've got this evidence, we're trying to achieve this school or this support, how are we going to get there? But I also take into consideration my experiences of tribunals, my experiences of results, my experiences of working with local authorities, and I know how to pitch things, how to ask for things. I know what to quote, where to quote it, that understanding of the case laws and what brings it in. You know, sometimes it might seem that we're quoting something, but we're just covering all areas. For example, there's a case law about making progress and issuing a EHCP, and it might say in paperwork that your child is making age-related progress, but I'll still quote that case law, because what is age-related progress? Is that child making progress that is suitable for them? You know, we're not interested, reality is, we're not interested in whether they are at the same level as their peers, because there are some children who are capable a lot more than that, and actually what we see is they're making age-related progress, but they need support to actually make the progress that they are capable of. And that, so there's many different reasons why we quote what we quote. I think sometimes one of the things I find really, really tough and difficult is when somebody asks me why I make a decision, what I make. And I think it's because I sometimes find that demanding, and I don't mean to, and I can't always explain why I make what decisions what I make. Or it might have been that I did the document last week, and I've met, you're asking me this week, and I can't fully remember why, and I'd have to actually go back through all the working document and all of the reports to actually get to grips with why I made the decision I made. That doesn't mean that I don't know what I'm doing, it's just that I do a lot of work, and it obviously, I've moved on to the next thing, and I've not necessarily remembered fully what it is that, why I've made that decision. But there's always a reason behind what I do and why I do it, and it might not always be clear to you. And sometimes ChatGPT might say to you, do this, do that, but actually, when you've actually gone through tribunal systems, or you've seen outcomes and you've viewed orders, etc., actually that's not the best thing to do. ChatGPT might have pulled in things from the internet with its understanding or from your documents, but that's not necessarily how it would be expected to be received or how we know it would be received. So sometimes that, yes, AI is a fantastic tool and it does help people, but we all need to also understand that sometimes people in positions like what I do, what Laura does, other advocates out there, have a different kind of knowledge, where we've been in different situations, we've worked with different cases, and we've seen the inside of tribunals, not just from a parent's perspective, but as a supporter, sometimes representation, in the meetings across the England that we've done in the different local authorities that have given us that different insight. So what ChatGPT might be pulling from one case, we've seen that manifest in 3 or 4 different cases, and can couple together different sources within our brains of what we've seen and what we've done to achieve the best possible outcome. And like I said, that outcome might not necessarily be 100% what you're expecting, because EHCPs are never ever 100% going to be solidly about your child, because of how they stand and how they are and how information is gathered and written. And we often find that a lot of reports, a lot of discussions that are had, and a lot of evidence that we get and medical letters etc. form a picture, but they're not always 100% accurate either. So when things are being pulled in and things are being agreed, it's often difficult to say, well, we're not going to agree to that because that's not true. Because if it's in a report and the LAs can evidence it in that report, the tribunal will go, but it's in this report, where's your evidence in another report to say it's not true? So there's lots of reasons why it's never going to be 100% perfect. You know, as much as we'd love it to be. And also children develop so quickly. What might be 100% accurate now in a month's time might not be 100% accurate, because how quickly our children do develop. So sometimes it's just a case of trusting a judgment and why we make what decisions and why we make. And I know everybody, you know, if they can and they've got the capacity to do so, because sometimes it's just about capacity for us to be able to open up and say, well, we've made what it is, or remembering etc., then we will be as open, I'm open, honest and transparent as I can. As some of you will know, when you've had calls and support calls and stuff with me, what my evidence and the advice that I give you doesn't necessarily always be what you'd expect. I don't always tell people, like for example, when we're deciding about going forward and what farts we're going to make, whether we should home educate EOTAS, I don't always say your child's got rights, fart for EOTAS, because at the end of the day it all comes down to your personal capacity as well. It's your family's capacity, how much you can take on, what your spoons are, how much the whole family, can the kids go through it, can the kids cope with it as well. So there's lots of variables in these situations that build up individual cases, and why you might get different advice compared to the next person who might have a similar case but in a different position. So there is always a reason why we say what it is, and I'm always honest with you. Like, I'm honest with the fact that instead of fighting for Section 19 alternative provision while I was fighting for the kids' EHCPs, I decided to home educate, because I didn't have the capacity to fight everything. And you have to make that decision about what it is that you are fighting. You've got to make a decision about what areas you're going to continue to fight and what areas you can just take a step back and think maybe not. Anyway, I'm going to leave it for there because I've just rambled on. I've had to cut it out and cut it in. It wasn't exactly the video that I wanted to do, but I'm still going to upload it. So yeah, bye.